चतुर्मुखसमारम्भां वाग्भटाचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां रागादिरोगान् सततान् शेषकाय प्रसदान शेषान औत्सुक्यमोहरतितान् जगान युवपूर्ववैद्याय नमोऽस्तु तस्मै. So I just initially, before I get into the content of discussion, I wanted to hear from you all who are present. What did you think of the chapter when we discussed on the other day? Are there any areas that made you think more, or you need more clarity, or any questions that you had already within you in this chapter? If any one of you or a few of you, whatever are your thoughts, could share, it will be helpful. Or any area that you need clarity, or was not clear, or was not clear about its application. Any point that you have? Okay. Okay, so I think no specific. Would anyone like to comment anything? You can just unmute and talk. Okay, fine. So yeah, so the other day when I discussed Doshopakramaniya Adhyayam, I'll be discussing the second part of the discussion that I had planned. So I feel the point that we plan to discuss today, as I mentioned, was the relevance of the commentaries that we have. Commentary in this context today. We had discussed the whole chapter and its content on the other day. So today we will be discussing a few of the relevant points that I feel to be discussed from the commentary and the content. So first, I would like to invite your attention towards the last part of the chapter, that is Aushadha Kala. Because see, what is the relevance of Aushadha Kala, and are we really practicing Aushadha Kala? Why it is told? So the last shloka, if needed, I think Harshita, you can share the commentary e-samhita. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll share it.
Yeah. So when we will first go through the why Acharya has mentioned Aushadha Kala over there. Why did he, when we are speaking about doshas upakramaniya, he had come to the Aushadha Kala context? Is it relevant? There you could see, he speaks about upakramana, he speaks about the shodhana karma, where it has to be done, and then he speaks about if shodhana is not possible, you have to go for shamana, and then he speaks about for shamana aushadas are needed, and finally he ends the chapter from the context of samprati aushadha kalan darshayannaha. Okay. You could see the commentary. I think everyone will be having the commentary. So when we think of this context, one point that we must understand is, if we go through Ashtanga Sangraham chapters, Ashtanga Sangraham, Doshadi Vijnaniyam, Doshobhediyam, Doshopakramaniya is actually followed by, here in Ashtanga Sadhyam, after Doshopakramaniya, we have Dividopakramaniya. But in Sangraha, After Doshopakramaniya, we have Roga Bhediyam, and one important chapter which is very relevant clinically is Bheshajavajaraniya. Okay. So after discussing Doshopakramaniya, before going to Dividopakramaniya, in Sangraha, we could see very important two chapters that are very relevant to understand anything clinically, the Rogabediyam Adhyayam and Bheshajavajarniyam Adhyayam. And you could see actually in Ashtanga Sangraham, this Aushadha Kala is mentioned in Bheshajavajarniyam Adhyayam only. So Rogabediyam Adhyayam, Rogabediyam Adhyayam in Ashtanga Sangraham discusses about the types of Roga. Then, the Roga Rogi Pariksha and what is Swatantra Roga, Paratantra Roga. All these things come under, how he discusses Doshopakramaniam. Now, when it comes to Roga, how should we approach it? How should in the clinic a physician approach a Roga? What is the prerequisite for that? Then he discusses the Roga Bediyam Adhyayam, wherein drogas can be different, Swabhavaja, Kalaja, Yuktija, Garbhaja, all these things, different kind of possibilities he describes. Then he describes Roga Rogi Pariksha. Then after Roga Rogi Pariksha and the Roga Bediyam, Ashtanga Sangraha speaks about Bheshaja Vacharaniyam Adhyayam, which is actually things that are needed for preparation or setting the settings for going for treatment, which is more described in Dividopakramaniam. There he again discusses Rogi Pariksha and what are the issues, what is the relation between Aushadha and Kala, and then he discusses about the Aushadha Kalas. So there, in that context only, what do you call it, as we could see in Ashtanga Sangraha, the context of Aushadha Kala, it is told. So here in Ashtanga Hridayam, let us see the shlokam, I think the previous one. Yunjyad anannam annadav, madhye ante kavalantere, grase grase muhuhu, sa annam samudgham, nishi cha aushadam. Okay. So there you could see so here he says, Samprati Aushadha Kalana Darshayan Ahaha. So here to describe the Aushadha Kala he speaks. So, when we prescribe medication, usually now I see many prescriptions wherein, this tablet 1 2B after food, 1 BD, 1 BD, 1 BD, 1 BD, many tablets in a prescription. That is not at all the understanding that Ayurveda has put forward. So there are 10 Aushadha Kalas. Yunjyad, one is Anannam, second one is Annadi, third one is Madhye, fourth is Ante, fifth is Kavalantere, sixth is Grase Grase, seventh is Muhuhu, eighth is Saannam, ninth is Samudgam, and 10th is Nishi. So first, the commentator actually describes and with a clarity that how should we understand? What is the difference between Kavala Antere? What is the difference between Grase Grase? Entry in the context. Dashete Aushadasya Kalaha. When we say Anannam, Anannam Aushadam Tad Uchyade Yad Upjasmin Bhunjitaha. That means Anannam means when he has the Aushadha after the digestion of the previous meal. Yadute Upayujya Parinate Tasmin Bhunjita. And then after the digestion of the morning food only, morning Aushadha only, he must have the food. Okay. You could see in the Yatra ahare jirne bheshajam, jirne aharaha tad anannam abhuktam nama. That means anannam is a period, anannam is the aushadha kala, when the medicine has to be given as previous food has to be digested, then he must be given aushada, and the next annam should be had only after digestion of the aushada. You know, in Kerala, there is a very common practice of writing kashayas, especially the Aryavaidian tradition. Okay, like the Kottakkal Ayurveda College before had a course called Aryavaidian from almost 1940s, 50s to 70s. I think it is late 70s only. BM, CCIM was formed, then BAM, then BAMS. That was the history. But till then, you know, before BAM, Kerala had a course DAM. And before that, every state in Kerala, like, you know, there was Kochi state, there was, they were having their own courses. So one such course was Arya Vaidyan course, which was actually introduced in Kottakkal Padashala at that time. And there are many practitioners who are still called Arya Vaidyan. Okay. So in that school, you know, generally, kashayams were given 6 a.m., 6 p.m. Okay. So even when I had my UG from Kottakkal, I've seen all my teachers writing 6 MV also. This understanding I could get later only. Not all kashayas, mostly. Gandharvasadi, 6 a.m., 6 p.m. Chirvilvadi, 6 a.m., 6 p.m. So this is actually, you know, Kafodreke Gade Anannam. Morning 6:30 is considered to be the Ananna Kala, which is Kafodreka, that we will come to later. So anyway, when it is told Anannam means previous meal has to be digested, and after having food, only after digestion only, the next meal should be had. Okay, so that is Anannam. Now, what is Annadav? Commentary says Annadav taduchyade yad upayujya samanantaram ahara upayogya vidhiyate. So, after having the aushada, immediately after that, when ahara is used, it is called as Annadav. So, in practice, we practice this a lot because Annadav vigune apane later. So naturally, annado vigune apane, whenever, you know, there is problem having a passing motion, baddha vitta, baddha shakrata, urinary issue, periods issue, whatever, wherever there is a problem with apana vayu, we prescribe medication just before food, especially in the night time. Chirvilvadi kashayam with a half teaspoon hingvajadi churnam. If I have a problem with apana and samana, just before the dinner. So just before dinner means you have the kashayam and have your dinner. That is the way we consider that. So that is why very clearly commentator says there, annadau taduchyade yad upayujya samanantaram ahara upayoga vidhiyate. Now next is madhye. Madhya iti annasya aharasya madhye yad aushadam bhujyate. Off late, when I had, like, you know, started observing more the relevance of aushadha kala, uh, I usually, you know, the 6 a.m., 6 p.m. practice that we used to have, and we always used to think, like, even in ulcer cases, patient who have digestive problem, amlodgaram, all this amla pitta parinama shula spectrum and all. Usually, I used to give medication at bedtime and all. But then, you know, when patient specifically comments about this Samana's involvement over there, at that time I started using it during, in between food. Like, you know, you have the rice or food, afternoon diet, and then you have little tiktagam, and then you have again your diet. When we started using it, that spectrum, the patient starts responding in a much better way. So this was all actually when we keep on practicing and observing how minute changes can be brought with simple medications in simple cases. I don't at this point speak if we have many issues, Vyadi Sankaram coming up with many other things and all, we'll be able to put a full stop with the number of Aushadas or Aushadakala. But when this is very specific, that is the case. So Madhya means Madhya iti annasya aharasya madhye yad aushadam. Ante means avasane. कवलान्तरे इति कवलयोः ग्रासयोः अन्तरे मध्ये न तु ग्रासमिश्रितं कृत्वेत्यर्थः. That means kavalantere means in between kavala. That means one kavala is grass only, like one morsel. So you have kavalantare, you have one grasaha, and then in between, and then again grasaha. Na tu grasa mushritam. So it should not be mixed with the morsel. The mixed with the morsel is the next annakala. Grase, grase. So he differentiates very specifically kavalantare in the commentary. Kavalantara iti kavalayoho, grasayoho, antare, madhye, न तु ग्रासमिश्रितं कृत्वे इत्यर्थः. Now what is grase? Grase grasa iti yad agnau asampraktam bujyate. Yad agrasah sampraktam bujyate. That means when you have food with every grasa. So, you in chronic Shwasa cases, there is traditional practices when they are asked, there is special Agastya Rasayanam that is prepared with this Haritaki, and there is, Kadika, Kadika means Haritaki as such is cooked in that, okay. And they are asked to have that one Haritaki with food. Okay. So with each morsel, you have one haritagi and little lekhya, Agastya Rasayanam. Like, we make at Ashtangam also, we tried that with some severe COPD cases. So special Agastya Rasayanam, wherein we make 15 kadika, 20 kadika means haritagi in Malayalam, 30 kadika. And then we ask the patient to have that 30 kadika in 1 week. So every day food for the breakfast or in the lunch period, every morsel, little rice, every morsel with the kadika and then food. Because grase, later we will see prane pradushte matarishwani. So, grasa antayoho prane pradush. So, whenever pranavayu is involved in the clinical, so there is a difference between kavalantere and grase, he says. And what is muhuhu? Muhuhu iti punaha bhukte abhukte va yad aushadam bujyate. So bhukte abhukte va. So that means muhu. You are, so we generally we give this in kasa, shwasa, etc. Pana jalams that we practice. So with the food you after food little, and then after that again you can have nothing directly related with always related with food. No, that is not the condition. So punaha bhukte abhukte va. So sometimes you have after food, then you keep gap, and then without food you have like this on and off again and again you having it as muhuhu iti. Sa annam iti saha annena aharena yad aushadam bujyate. So along with the food when we give, that is yadav. That is the food. There is no grase. Every morsel, no. It is completely, totally, it is mixed with the food and then totally they are having. And samudgam is twice. Having, what is that? Samudgam tadbhanyate tad aharasya prak paschad cha prayujyate tena hi samudga. So puta yugala samena aushadadvayena aharo madhi kriyate. So actually ahara is packed in between two morsels or two ends of the medicine. So that is samudgam. So hidma, akshepaka, combine those contexts. Samudga kala is used. That is, you have medicine and then you have rice. I mean, whatever the food that you are probably planning, and then at the end you have again food. So that is samudgaha samputakaha. Nishihi taduchyade yet shayana velayam bujyate. Shayana velayam, when we are going to sleep. So these 10 annakalas he very clearly describes. So when we go through the Hemadri's content also, Shamana Aushada Kalanaha Yunjyaditi grasa iti yatra ahare jirne bheshajam jirne aharaha tad anannam abhaktam nama. So ahara, after yesterday's food is digested, you have the medication, and only after digestion of it you have the first food. Yatra grihite aushade aharaha tad annadau. After having the aushada, immediately you have ahara, that is annadau, that is prag bhaktam. Yatra ardhahare bheshajam paschadache aharaha tad You have half food and then again medicine madhya bhaktam nama. Then further ahara, that is. So here Hemadri specifically says madhya means after ardha ahara. After half of food you take, then you have the medicine. And then yatra grihita eva ahare bheshajam tad ante adho bhaktam. Ante is adho bhaktam. Yatra pratigrasam grasa sampriktam aushadam tad kavalantare. After every, between every grasantaram nama. Then yatra pratigrasam grasa sampriktam aushadam tad grase sagrasam nama. So that is grase, sagrasam, grasantaram. Kavalantara is called grasantaram. Grase is called sagrasam. Yatra bhuktasya abhuktasya va punaha punaushadam tad muhuhu namaha. So bhuktasya abhuktasya va punaha aushadam. So muhuhu means you with after food, without food, like that when we have, that is muhuhu. Yatra aharena sahasaditam mishrikritam cha aushadam tatra sannam. Yatradho bheshajam tado anantaram eva aharaha tado anantaram eva punaha bheshajam tad samudgam. Samudgam samputaha. Yatra ratrau swapnakale bheshajam tad nishi naisham nama eva dausha aushada kalaha. So he described the aushada kala. So many a times we totally neglect this aushada kala. But as I it is my very personal conviction, as we realize later, I also realized as we moved on to practice and try to find out the responses, the relevance of it in the body. So when we go to the next content of the aushadha kala, that is where to give aushadha, where to give each kala, in which clinical conditions each kala has to be given. Kafodreke gade anannam balino roga rogino annado vigune samane madhyeshyate vyane ante pratarashasya sayamashasya tuttare. As grasantayoho prane pradushti matarishvani. Then muhur vishachardi hidmatrishvasakasishu. Yojyam sabhojyam bhaishajyam bojehi chitrehi arojake. Kampa akshepaka hidmasu samudgam lagubhojanam. I think, yeah. Samudgam lagubhojanam. Urdhvajatru vigareshu swapnakale prashasyate. So again, you could see in the commentary of the context, as I mentioned, kabodreke gade anannam. So the practice of, very common practice of giving kashayas at 6 a.m., 6 p.m. Is generally considering kafodreke, that is gade anannam. And then after having the food, then after its digestion, the dinner time was there, or the morning food that was considered. So their commentary you could see kafodreke roge nirannam aushadam yojyam. Kayoho ityahaha, for whom balinaha ityadihi. So there some clinical points he added. Kafodreke gade anannam balino roga roginaha. So roga and rogina balina. So it is not just kafodregatvam. You must make sure that the rogi is balavan also. If the person is not balavan, you may not think of this spectrum. That I have again experienced. Usually with Gandharva Hastadi Kashayam or Chirvilvadi Kashayam, I give it in the morning, 6 a.m., 6:30. So in a few cases, they come and say, hey doctor, after having that kashayam in the morning, I feel so tired. I feel my eyes, I'm like some kind of giddiness is happening. If you are really giving good Gandharvastadi kashayam, we have kashaya churnam over there. We often ask them to prepare kashayam at home, not bottled kashayam. So, but then I could understand that bala of the rogi, sattva bala of the rogi and physical bala of the rogi was very low. In that case, only such people had experienced these things. So in those cases, what we practically do is, we now when we say it is just annadav viguneyapane, Apana is not the only entity that is affected. There is a dominance of kapha's presence at the background. It is kaphavata. But then if the rogi's bala is less, then we don't tend to make it 6:30. We make it like, 7:38, and then you have breakfast at 8:30. So it's not even anna though, just a little before anna though. Like that, I modify the medication considering both these aspects. So this thing why Acharya has mentioned, he says, Balavati roge rogini cha tad kevalam annadihi ahitam aushadam yojyam. Kevalam annadi rahitam aushadam yojyam. Taddi nirannam ativiryam bhavati. So when we give medication nirannam, the medication has ativiryam to it. Okay, that is why. So the virya of the medication is very high when we give as anannam. So the context that we had discussed, after digestion of previous meal, and then only after its digestion, patient must have the breakfast or the next meal. So it is ativiryam. So only that individuals who have the bala to tolerate the ativiryam can be given the medication. That is why balavamscha yadi rogi tada upayujyate na tu durbale, it is told. It should not be used in durbala. Durbalasya tu anna sahitam na glanikaram bhavati. Very important clinical point. So if durbala, you can give anna sahitam. When we give it anna sahitam or with little gap of anna, glani will not be happening too much. Annadau iti. So what is annadau iti? Apane vayo vigune kupite sati aushadham bhuktva samanantaram evam aharam ishyata ityarthaha. So as I mentioned, it is very common practice. So my clinical experience again, usually I used to think, okay, think, it is my thought, okay, having kashayas just before food, it is very difficult for a person, because even I personally, when we have kashayas, have kashaya and then having food, it will be very difficult for the patient. So usually I used to prescribe Gandharvastadi or Chirulvadi at bedtime. You have food, then have. But many a times in specific cases, Gandharvastadi with Gandharva don't work at all. So I used to feel, what is the thing? It's not working. Then, we discussed, and I had seen always my earlier principal, Prasad sir. He always used to be, just before food you have, he always used to be specific regarding that. So just before that, so in practice, when we started again giving just as annadi, lunch just before dinners, just before have Gandharvastadi and Erandam, then dinner, patients were having it, tolerating it, no issues at all. And then he was having, patient was having very good evacuation in the morning, which was not happening when I was giving at night. So this was very clearly proven. So it was my thought that patient will be having difficulty to have the kashaya medicine and have food. Nothing will happen. You can very confidently give. So I always, whenever there is conspicuous problem with the apana vayus functions, in case of mutra pravarti, mala pravarti, whatever it is, annadi is the best option, no doubt about it. Now, apane vayu, so samane, as I mentioned in practice, samana vayu, I have been using it most commonly in the case of ulcers, whether it is usually peptic ulcers, and patients who present with burning sensation during eating and even after that, okay, after food. So whenever after having food and after 1.5 hours or after half an hour, they feel that burning sensation coming up more and more. So whether it is peptic ulcer, whether it is duodenal ulcer, both the cases I understand it to be the presence of samana vayu affliction more. So in that context, I start like initial, after if samavastha is there, it is again pachana and all given earlier. And after that, once we try to introduce sneha ghrutam, I plan it in between the food, during food only. So I had done and with good effect. Tiktaka ghrutam, And if patient is unable to have tiktaka ghritam, then the best thing, simple go ghritam, normal go ghritam. You have food, rice and all, and then you have little ghee. Then I don't mix up it with any curry. So I just put them on diet for almost 2 weeks or 21 days or something. You have rice and this thing. Or if you are having usually chapati, no, it is again pay. With those things, we don't advise chapati. Either kind of, that is again difficult to digest. Again, pitta prakopam will happen. We advise kanni, khichdi kind of thing, or rice in between. So samane madhye ishyate. व्याने प्रावायो विगुणे प्रातराशस्य पूर्वान्नभुक्तस्य अन्ते अवसाने भेषजम् इष्यते. I am practicing it very commonly now in Parkinson's cases. Other day also I had told you, I think. So usually now, whenever there is a problem, cases coming to us with affliction of gati, that is the gait is problematic, whether it is Parkinson's, neurodegenerative spectrum, or multiple sclerosis, transverse myelitis, CIDP, AIDP, pakshagada, all wherein there is an affliction of gati, Vyanavayu's involvement. I prescribe medication after breakfast. Okay, so it is like Vyane Ante Pratarashas. Yeah, so I give Brahmi Drakshadi Kashayam with Ashwagandharishtam after food, after breakfast, and after dinner. Okay, then again, so especially in this spectrum, I am preferring that medication. I mean that kalam, aushadha kalam. Sayam ityadihi uttare vyane apekshaya udane maruti vigune sayam ashasya aparana bhuktasya tuante beshajam. This bulbar palsy, pseudo bulbar palsy, because we have a neuro OP here and the Panchakarma department is running that. So I am exposed to those cases more. So wherever I feel speech affected, Urasthana Mudanasya, the other day we had discussed, Nasana Vak Pravarti is responsibility of Udana. So wherever there is a problem with Udana Vayus, Pravarti, Vak, Smruti, etc., then the Aushadha Kala of evening Aushadha Kala is selected. So that is Udane in the evening. Okay. So the commentary, Uttare Vyane Pekshe Udane Marute Gune Sayamashasya Aparana Bhuktasya Tvantere Peshajam Ishyate. Prane Matarishwani Vate. So the context of Grasa Grasantayoho Prane Pradushte Matarishwani. So in that line of Grasa Grasantayo, both Kavalantere and Grase has come up. Okay, so in between Kavala or along with Kavala, Prane, Matarishwani, Pranavayu, Vate, Pradushte, Vikrite, Grasa Grasantarayoho, Bheshajam Isyate. Grasasya Grasantascha Tayoho, Tena, Grasa Sampraktam Aushadam, Grasayoho Madhye Beshajamiti Chavatishtate. That means both the context. Grasasya Grasantascha Tayoho. So at the end of grasa or in between both the grasas. So both the context is told in prane pradushte. This we commonly practice, as I mentioned, in Shwasa cases. And the practice is of lehya. As I mentioned, the special Agastya Rasayanam. And churnas, Tipali churnam. When this Shwasa, when we find more involvement with the Samana, then Shwasa coming up. Samana is afflicted clinically, patient does not have appetite, then Shwasa. In those contexts, Ashtachurnam and Sitopaladi or Togeladi is mixed together. And then it is told to be having like grasa in between. So these kind of things is practiced. So whenever Pranavayu's affliction is there, grasa we say. Grasa antayoho it is told. Muhur vishachardi hidmatrit shwasakasishu. Here chardi we practice muhur. Visha I have no experience in practicing muhu. Chardi we practice. Chardi we practice is the common thing that we give in chardi is laja peya. the patient is having continuous vomiting. Okay, either whether it is like, some dehydration kind of thing or some other spectrum. Though Laja Pay has one thing, that is Stambhana, at the same time it supports Rasa. There we give Muhur Muhur only. So Laja, we just boil it in water. If add with little sugar and elathiri, and that is the ela. So that is added, and we advise them to have frequently, little. That is the context. Mohur mohur. So if they have some food, and we ask them to have like this. One thing is they will not be able to have anything continuously. This vertigo cases, then we give Dusparshagadi Kashayam or Gorochanadi or Badradarvadi with Ardragasvarasam, then Laja Peya Mohur Mohur. So that is Chardi. Tritta Shwasa Kasa. In Trit also we practice Laja Peya. Then in Trit we practice, Trit Trishna is again, this hyponatremia, hypokalemia spectrum is considered under the Samprapti of Trishna. It's not just the thirst that we really visualize with the word Trit. But anyway, if somebody is having Trishna as the Samprapti told in our Shastra, or the normal Trishna, both the cases, we advise them to have Muhur Muhur, not at a stretch. Muhur Muhur, then Hidma. Then Hidma, in case recently also we had Pakshagadam night calls continuously with Hidma coming up. So we couldn't manage it with our medication. Finally, we had to refer the case because Hidma can be a possibility with some cardiac issue. And for us, Hidma is like, Mrutyakale thing. And finally, the patient had admitted for 2 days. They started with baclofen. Its Hidma stopped. But once baclofen is withdrawn, again Hidma continued. Then I had given Vasti, Matra Vasti, and then a Vaishwandra Vasti, after which Hidma. Then he was brought back to our hospital. I tried this because he was not passing motion for 2 days. Then I had did that. Then Hidma came up. But anyway, at that time, what I had given was Nayopayam, Kashayam, Muhur Muhur only with Dhanvantram, 5 Dhanvantram tablet boiled with almost 500 ml of Nayopayam Kashaya Churnam. And we have a prayogam for Hidma with the Paditha Plavila Netta. Plavila means our jackfruit trees leaves are there, no? That Paditha means what is it, like very ripened jackfruit trees leaves, petioles, the end point that is collected. That is actually very commonly used by many Vaidyas in Kerala. So whenever there is a Hidma, just water boiled with this Paditha Plavila Nyetta. Nyetta means the end point of the leaf. So Paditha means ripened leaves of Plavila that is taken and boiled and have internally. Okay, so that was used commonly. So that is added, and whenever we gave Nayopayam, his Hidma stops. But after that, it again began. So Hidma is also very commonly practiced Muhur Muhur. Hidma, Tritta, Shwasa, and Kasa. In both the cases, whichever Kalpana that we are giving, whether it is Churna Kalpana or Fanta, Panajala, whatever, or Lehya, whatever we are selecting according to the Avastha, there we are using it as Muhur Muhur only. Okay. Now the next one, there he says, Muhur Muhur Bhukte Yada Bhukteva Beshajam. Arochakaihi Aruchau Saha Bhojyehi Bheshajyam Vyojyam. Kidrishaihi Bhojyehi, like how, what kind of Bhojyehi? Chitraihi. Chitraihi, here he explains, Aneka Vidaihi. So that is again clinically relevant. Yojyam Sabhojyam Bhaishajyam Bhojyehi Chitraihi Arochakaihi. So, in Arochaka, you must use Bhaishajyam along with Bhojyehi, but how? Aneka Vidaihi Bhojyehi you must use. So, it is very imperative. He is giving us a guidance that it is Aneka Vidaihi that we are supposed to use it. Now, it has to be above only. It should not be coming down. Okay, it's not finished. Yeah. So the last line of the content. Kidrishaihi bhojaihi chitraihi aneka vidaihi. Aneka vidaihi. Samudgam. So aneka vidaihi. So in Arochakam, aneka vidaihi food has to be given. So it is not like same kind of food you give. No. you must give bhaishajam with different kind of things. So patients who are actually the common thing that we practice in Arochaka is Ashtachurnam with honey only. Rajanyadi and Ashtachurnam are the common churnas that we practice in Arochakam. This thing. Then the next option is Vaishwanaram. Then the option is Hingojati. So Vaishwanaram, which since it has got more Haritaki, whenever there is Apana with the Samana, that means Apana Vayu affliction is there along with Samana, Vaishwanaram is chosen. But if only Samana and Aruchi along with Agnes thing, Ashtachurnam, if it is in kids and all, Rajanyadi. And then we have it in different forms. Like, we ask them to mix it with milk a little and give hot milk. Then we ask them with rice and give. Chapati means with chapati and honey you give. Whatever case, in different ways, little, we try to give. So different kind of food that is practiced in Arochaka. That is also relevant. And why this point I wanted to discuss more was because of late when in my personal experiences, when I started thinking and concentrating more on Aushadakalas, the responses in the cases were much better. And it is not simple that Acharya has given us such a beautiful guideline. And we could see the guideline is basically based upon Vayus, Vatas. It is not based upon Pitta and Kapha. Why might have like why this was first one of my earlier questions when I was in BMS, when I had started this chapter, when we had learned and all. I used to think, why only Vata? Why didn't he Acharya tell about according to Pittas and Kabha, this Aushadha Kala? And then I feel for any transformation to happen, and for anything for get transformed, when we are giving aushadha and it to act in the body, the basic thing that is needed is vayu only. So once vayu is considered, naturally pitta and kabha cannot act without vayu. So it is this understanding. And then he had actually given us kaphodreke gade. So if it is kapha dominant, okay, kapha dominance speaks over there. It's not just kapha. Definitely vata's presence will be there. But if it is kapha, Gadeyanannam, provided Bala, one Rogi and Roga, it is there. Then he gives us all about Vayu, because when we think only of Vayu and introduce Aushadha, other things will work upon. Okay. Then Samudgam Yad Adav Ante Aharasya Kampa Hidma Akshepakam. So again, you could see for Hidma, Acharya gives us two options. One is Muhur. The second one is Samudgam. Both the things we can practice. Okay. This in the other case I had practiced. When he came back and then again Hidma started, then I had given, you give for Dhanvantram, 3 Dhanvantram with Nayopayam, then give him food. Then again Dhanvantram Nayopayam. And we started giving it 2 or 3 times, then his Hidma stopped. So I think something chronic, you can use the Samudgam Hidma. And Samudgam Kampa, Akshepaka and Hidma. So Kampa, I don't see this Kampa as, whenever in the present context Kampa comes, we think of Kampavadam, Parkinson's. No, I think Kampa here, it is just a clinically manifested tremor, not with a systemic samprapti. Here, I think Parkinson's and all can be included under the broad spectrum of Akshepaka Vyadi, no doubt about it. There also Samudgam, it is told. So wherein, so in Kampa cases, people who have got the fun point in practice was people who have stress related things, anxiety coming up with the presence of Kampa. In that context, I had used Kalyanaka Gratam. And if Pitta dominant issue happens during Pitta Kala in the afternoon, night and all, I had used Pravala Bhasma just before and after food. So that is a limited clinical practice, but I have not tried in that aspect in Parkinson's, just before have food and then again like that I have not tried. But in Avapidaka Snehapanam, wherein Annado Prag Bhaktam Shasyate Kritam Jirnantikam Cha Uttamaya. So Prag Bhaktam, in that context we had tried. Okay. So pragbhaktam, then jirnantikam, then you give another grida in wherever there's a urinary issue along with kampa is present, but exclusively not tried. But I have tried it in hidma and this kind of kampa. So samudgam it is told. Then he tells there that kampadishu prashasyate iti vakshyamaneena sambandha kesham laghu annashinam. So in between laghu annam would be enough. Urdha jatrvikareshu shayana velayam aushadam prashasyate iti. So he clearly says shayana velayam during night. Okay. So in the context, so Arunatha gives us a clarity regarding the practice in a better way. Now when we go through the Hemadri's content over here, we could see Hemadri has in his commentary explicitly and exclusively at many contexts has taken the collection from Ashtanga Sangraham. Okay, so Anannasya Vishayamaha Kafodreke Gateti Tritiyo Bhagaha Shleshma Aha. So what is Kafodreke? And he describes over there Ahaha Tritiya Bhagaha Shleshma Kalaha Tadardham Kafodreke Tasmin Gate Tadanantarameva. So he says, what is Kafodreke Anannam? How can we decide? So he says, if we think of Ahas, Ahaha, Tritiya, morning, Tritiya Bhagaha, Shleshma, 1/3 is Shleshma Kala. That's half is Atadhardaha Kafodreke. In the half of that, Kafa will be high. So after that, you have to consider. So if it is like morning, if we take Ahas, morning will be Kapha, then Pitta, then Vada. So that morning, whenever sunrise to the earlier period, like 5 to 8 or 9, then after half, maybe 5 to 6:30, after that, Kapha Udrekatvam will be there. So you can consider that time as Kapha Udrekatvam. So that is one practical guideline that Hemadri gives us. Then Prag Bhaktasya Vishayam Annadaviti, Madhye Bhaktasya Samana, Ado Bhaktasya Vyanayante, Grasa Grasantayoho, he says. So I think that is the context. And you come down, I think we will not go through that. That is the context told in Ashtanga Sangraham. There, below. सामुद्गस्य विषयं कम्पाक्षेपकहिद्मासु धन्या नैष औषधस्य विषयमाः ऊर्ध्वजतृविकारेषु सङ्ग्रहेतु एकादश औषधकाला उक्ताः अन्तर्भक्तं यत् पूर्वानभुक्तं जीर्णे मध्याह्ने भेषजम् उपयुज्यते. And he described the context of Ashtanga Sangraham. It will be very detailed things from Sangraham only. So I think if somebody is interested can read the Sangraham chapter where the context is there. So this much is told about what you call it as the Aushadha Kala mentioned here. Okay. So anything to be discussed with respect to Aushadha Kala? Or any clarification or any opinion, any experience should be shared by any of you? Okay, then I think then we will just from the commentary point of view, previous shlokas if we go through, I think I have only 2 or 3 contexts to be discussed. See, when we come down, we will just go to the previous shlokas of Kritva Shitoshna Vrishtinam Pratikaram Yathayatam before the context over here. And Swastavrittam Abhipretya Vyado Vyadi Vashenato. So there, before coming to Aushadha Kala, just before that, when we go through the whole sequel or sequence of describing this chapter, initially Acharya speaks about the Vata, Pitta and Kabhasya Upakramaha. Then he says you have to do Shamana to the Vyadi without causing any problem to the other doshas. So for that we need to understand what is dosha gati. Then he introduces us with the concept of the shakhasti karma gati and shakha to koshta gati. And then he gives us an idea about if this is the Koshtagati, we have to control the doshas in its sthana. If it goes to somewhere else, it is a problem. And as one of the most clinically observed entities wherein we can identify samavastha with the doshas, he introduces the concept of sama, and then clinically how to understand sama is Rotoroda Balapramsha. Then he says, if it is samavastha, you should not be just remove the doshas just like that. It will be like ama faladra saniva. Then you have to do pachane, deepane, snehe, svedai. Only then you have to do that. Okay. And then he gives us an idea about if you have to do pachana, shodhana and all, how, when to do the kalam. So the context here, कृत्वा शीतोष्णवृष्टीनां प्रतीकारं यथा यतं प्रयोजयेत् क्रियां प्राप्तं क्रियाकालं न हापयेत्, gives us an understanding about what is the relevance of kriya kalam. He says, see, just before shloka was Atyushna Varsha Sheetam, Shravane Kartike Chaitre. You could just go to the previous shlokas. From there, we will come down. Okay. Just before that. Just before that shloka. Yeah. So, what is Shodhana Kala? You have to go for Shodhana if it is needed. So, he gives us an idea about what is Shodhana Kala. Shravane Kartike Chaitre Mase. Sadharana Kramat, Grishma Varsha Himochitana, Vayu Adishan. So, according to the Avastha, according to the need of the our like Vata, Pitta, and Kaba, which undergoes respectively Chaya in which all seasons Grishma, Varsha, and Hemanta. So, they have to be removed from the body through Shravana, Kartika and Chaitra, which are the initial months during the respective seasons. So, why? Because Grishma, Varsha, Himochitan, Vaivadi, Ashu, Nirharet. Why? Because Grishma is Atyushna, Varsha is Varsha, and Hima is Shita. So that is why they have to be removed. Then he says, so in the commentary you could see, Kramat Yatha Kramam, Grishma Chitam Vayu, Shravane Nirharet. Varshachitam Pitte Kartige Nirharet. Hemanta Shishirachitam Kabham Chaitre Nirharet. Because Chaitra is the first month of Vasanta. Okay, Kartika is the first month of Sharat. So etehi sadharana kalaha. So in that is why Shodhanam should be done in that way, he says. Now next he says, Nanu Grishmadishu eva kasmad vatadayoho na shodhyante. He says, why Grishma in Grishmadishu vatadaya should not be removed. It should be removed after that. Then he gives in the next shloka, the commentary, gives us an explanation about what's happening in Grishma Ritu, what's happening in Varsha Ritu, etc. Like, you could see Atyushna Varsha Shitaha, Hi Grishma Varsha Himagama, Sandau Sadharane Tesham. Grishmadayoho Atyushnadi Yuktaha, Ati Ushna Varsha Shitanam, Grishma Varsha Himagamanam, Sadharane Sandau, Shitoshna Varsha Samabhave Kale, Doshan, Vatadin, Dushtan, Vikrutan, Vishodayet. Sandauhi Samyam. So, in Sadharana Kala only, Samavastha will be there in Atyushnas. That is why Sandauhi Samyam. So, Ati Ushna Varsha Shita, there will be too much of issues. So, you could see in the commentary. Tatahi Grishme, Tau, Tavad Adana Glanam, Kharatara Vikarana Taptam, Pipasa Klamadi, Akula, Aprati Pravilina, Dosham Atishitalam Shariram Bhavati. So because of the tabam of the sun, Pipasa, Klama, etc., doshas are Atishitalam. So the aushadha should not be given in that context for Shodhana when the body is Atishitilam. So in that context, he whole commentary sees as the relevance of causing Shodhana in the coming season. I mean the next period. Now here, he gives us, this is a guideline for Swastha. That is why Swastha Vrittam Abhipretya, he says. The commentary says, स्वस्थावस्थानाम् अधिकृत्यायं संशोधनकालोक्तः व्याधौ तु आत्येके व्याधि अनुरोधेन संशोधनकालः. So vyado vyadi vashena tu, when he says, it indicates, according to vyadhi you can do whatever it is needed. And then he comes to the next shloka. Okay, so next shloka, kritva shitoshna vrishtinam pratikaram yatha kartam. The next shloka, there he says, shitoshna vrishti, if it is we are doing it for vyadhi, hemantadi shitoshnado kale vyadhi samshodhana asadhya sambhavatah. So how can we do that? If there is a problem in hemanta, etc., vyadhi happens according to our rule previously, it cannot be done. So he gives us another guideline. Kritva shitoshna vrishtinam pratikaram yathayatam. You artificially create shita ushna vrishtis, opposite things, and then you do kriya. That is why in the commentary he explains shitoshna vrishtinam pratikaram kritva means what? Kritrimam ritugunam yathayatam sampadya. According to Rutu Gunam, Kritrimam you do. Samshodhanadi Lakshanam Kriyam Prayojet. Kritrima Gunopadanam means what? Hemante Garbha Grihadi. Grishme Dhara Grihadini. So you create Hemanta, you create a room exclusively Garbha. There is no cold. Grishme Dara Grihadini. So in Grihadini. So in Grishma, you make a house where there is cold breeze. I mean, cold means flowing water happening, so that the heat is less at that context. So if Vyadhi, you have to do Shodhana, you create such artificial situations. Kriya kalam na hapayet, na ati kamayet. You must understand the Kriya kalam of the disease should not be left out. Because if we don't create the situations and then do the procedure, what will happen? Proper Shodhana will not happen. Samyak Lakshana will not happen. So now the whole context here, when he explains this, is only one point that I want to stress is whenever we are performing a Shodhana to a particular patient, Kalam is very relevant. That is the only point why he was. I think, Acharyas, when they had this text, written this text, everyone was aware about how Ritu's change would be there, how the body would change according to the Ritu. And when people were actually involved in all agricultural things and whose life was running according to agriculture, if there is rain, this is the thing that's going to happen. Now we will not be harvesting. After the rain only we will harvest. We will try to sow the rice after this much harvest. So, the whole life and the whole population or the society was always aware of what's happening in the Ritu, what's happening in the environment. In such situation, when diseases happened or swastha was there, according to that awareness, it has to be created. So there are two contexts. In Grishma, it is very hot, which would happen or do happen to the body's strength. Varsha, it is very cool, and due to the Varsha rains, it is Shitattvam is more, and Hemanta, Skannatvam will be more. So after Grishma, when Varsha falls, the because of the hot background, when Varsha happens, there is Vidahitvam. Then that is causing the Pitta issue during the Sharad, which follows Varsha. So this, according to that, we must be aware of doing Vamana Virechana or Vasti. If it is in disease is happening during Hemanta, Hemanta is very Shita, and you have very kind of Shita diseases, you want to make them undergo a Virechana, you have to create an atmosphere in a way that happens. That is the only guideline I think in this context we need to understand clinically. Okay. So I think, so this is one context that I wanted to speak. Then the another point that I would wanted to discuss over here is that Vyayama Dushmas Taishna, the context, wherein Acharya describes the doshas jati. I think with that we will. So the shloka number 17. Vyayama Dushmas Taishna Daha Ahidajaranadapi. Yeah. So, how dosha moves from koshta to shakha and how it comes back, Acharya says, ask the questions. I think when we see the commentary book, we could connect why Acharya has come from one shloka to another shloka. Like just before shloka, prayogaha shamayet vyadhim ekam yo anyam udirayet na so vishuddhaha shuddhastu shamayedana kopayet. So one should be doing only for Shuddha Chikitsa, one should not go for Vishwam and Ashuddha Chikitsa. When he gives us a guideline, then what is the reason why this has to be happening. So for understanding that, you must have a clarity regarding what is dosha's movement. So that is why khatam doshaha koshtad shakasti marma suyantihi iti ahaha. So he says over here. Okay, so vyayamad ushnastaishna dahidacharanadapi. Commentary says koshtad udarad shakasti marmani doshaha yanti kutaha. How? Hetu chatushtayam ahaha. There are 4 causes for doshas to move from koshta to shakasti marmani. I had, I think, the other day discussed about a case where I understand or attribute the doshas movement due to vyayama to from the koshta to the madhyama roga marga. So hetu chatushtayam vyayamaदिभिः शाखास्ति मर्माणि दोषाः यान्ति तत्र व्यायाम उपजात श्रमस्य ऊर्ध्वं प्रपन्नः पवनः व्यायाम कृत क्षोभ श्रम ऊष्मादिभिः प्रशिथिलं चलं च दोषं स्वास्पाद च्यावयित्वा पर्याकुलं शाखादिषु क्षिपति. So he says how the doshas move from koshta to shaka through vyayama. So because of the shrama caused by vyayama, prapannaha urdhva prapanna pavanaha vyayama krita kshobaha shrama ushmadibihi. So the ushma that is caused because of kshoba and shrama through vyayama, that is actually resulting in the prashitilam chalam, that is actually moving the vayu from the koshta pratyavayitva shakhadishu tata and agni tapadi sambandinaha. Now next one is with respect to the agni, that is ukshmanaha taikshnayad tikshnena hi ushmana vilayita. So what happens because of the tikshnatvam of the ushmana? Ushmana is agni, vilayita. The doshas are undergoing vilayana. Vilayana is liquefaction. Doshaha teneva cha ushmana vivriteshu srotomukheshu satsu shakhadini yantihi. So because of the ushmanatvam, the dosha vilayana happens, and it says because of the ushmanatvam only srodo mukha vivartatvam happens. The doshas again are moved from the koshta to the shakha. Ahitaha ityadihi ushmastaišņāda ahitācharanādapi ahita ityadihi. The commentators ahitena cha sevitena doshaha swapramanād atirichyamanaha koshtād āpūryam varshikaiva jalaukha nimnonataniva shakhasti marmani prapadyante. Like because of ahitacharana etc., doshas are vitiated even in swapramanad atiricyamanaha, in quantum according aggravated with respect to their pramana. So for filling the koshtam, like in rain the jalauka moves, similarly the doshas move to shakasti marmani, that is ahitacharana. Api samuchaye. Here he says api, ahitacharanad api indicates samuchaye. So it is not just one singly altogether. Then he speaks about drutattvadityadihi. Drutatvad means shigravahitvad. Marutasya cha poshtad shakhasti marmani doshaha yanti. So shigravahitvad marutasya cha. So drutatvan marutasya cha. So along with the above 3, if there is marutas drutatvam also, marutas shigravahitvam also, then things move on very easily from koshta to shakha. So these factors are the in general the specific possibilities or mechanism that can bring the koshta, doshas in the koshta to the shakha. Then, Hemadri speaks about Atha Sthanabeda Upakrama Uchyate Tatra Doshanam Sthanantaram Prapti Prakaramaha Vyayamadihi. So, what is the causes that can lead to Sthanantara Prapti of dosha? So, Hemadri speaks about the mechanism in a different way. Doshas from their normal position, they have to go to Sthana Antaratum. He gives us four clues. That is why व्यायामादिभिः चतुर्भिः that is व्यायाम उष्णस्तैष्ण अहिदाचरण धृतत्वान् मारुतस्था कोष्ठस्थाः दोषा शाखाख्यं बहिर्भागं यान्ति मध्ये वा अस्ति मर्माख्यम्. So he speaks that is asti marmakyam. Then shakhadibhyah katam dosham koshtaha yantihi. Then from the koshta shakha, how doshas are coming back. Srotamukha vishodhanat, vridya vishandanat, pakat koshtat. There also in commentary he says Shrotasa mukhani tesham vishodhanam. Vishodhanam means vivaranam. Tasmad doshaha koshtam yati. So when Shrotas mukha becomes vivaranam, dilated, from the doshas can move to koshta. Tatha, along with that, vriddhyadibihi. What is vriddhi? Swapramana atirekaha. Vriddhahi doshaha swani shrotamsi apurya koshtam yantihi. So the doshas which swapramanataha becomes more, they come, they finish or they cover up these shrotas. That is, they fill up the shrotas. Shrotas is apurya koshtam yanti, move to koshtam. What is abhishandana cha? Na agnitapadi tikshnoshnadi samshleshadeva apito. What is abhishandanam? Shira dadyad abhishandana bhojanadapi. So, like Shira dadyadi abhishandana bhojana happens according to the condition. Agnitapadi tikshnoshnadi samshleshadiva. So, because of the samshleshana, that is abhishandana, liquefaction of the doshas, because of the tikshnatvam and ushnatvam, and the nature of the doshas, like it Shira Dadi, I mean, nature of the Nidana, like Shira Dadi, etc., abhishandanam can happen. And what is Paka? Pakwaha doshaha Kvachid asanna jantaha koshtam yanti. So, he gives us the mechanism of these things. Okay. So now, what is the clinical relevance? How from shaka to koshta it can come is the panchabihi hetus, like Hemadri says. Tata shakasta asti marmasta va shrotamukha vishuddhyadibihi panchabihi hetuvi koshtam yantihi. Abhishandanam means dravi bhavaha. Anything that can cause dravi bhava is God. So I think if we visualize a samprapti to be in shaka, how to bring back them to koshtam so that it can be removed. The four methodologies would be Srotamukha Vishodhana, Vriddhi, Abhishandana, Paka, Koshta, and Vayushta Nigraha. Okay. I think, yeah, these are the points that I wanted to discuss from the commentary. If anything to discuss, we can discuss. I think we'll stop.
Thank you so much, ma'am. If there are any doubts, I request to please unmute and ask the doubts. Ma'am, I think we can wind up, ma'am.
Okay, okay. Then.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Good night.
Good night, ma'am. Thank you.
Good night.